Ring, 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 ring.
Hello?
Is this Patrick?
Yeah, who's calling?
Would you like to know? What's your favorite scary movie?
Huh. Well, that's funny. That's funny you should ask because today we are actually breaking down our top 5 horror movies of all time. Imagine that, right? You called on the right day.
That wasn't my intention, but okay, I guess we will.
Well, this is a Comic Talkers production, and you are listening to Just for Flicks. What's going on? It's your boy, Patty B. With me, as always, is Mr. B Dog, Mr. Brandon. How's it going, man? How you doing?
You just look like an airbender trying to sit there hyping yourself up the whole time. You're like, oh,
I'm like Tom Cruise in Magnolia.
You're a wannabe Jedi at this point for us, But no, I'm excited to do this. Not my genre of films, but I can get into it. But we couldn't do it without two amazing guests we have on this podcast. First off, we want to welcome for the first time ever, Mr. Rick Prince. Rick, how are you doing?
Hello, thanks for having me on.
Awesome. And you guys don't know, Rick, tell the fans a little bit about yourself and what you're into other than Star Wars.
Right on. Well, I wear many hats in this industry, and one of the main ones has been in horror capacity. So I make monster movies, made a couple of films featuring cryptids and unique horror characters themselves. So I'm a big fan of horror, and I definitely have a top 5 list.
Absolutely. And fans, if you guys also want to know where Rick is from, he is also from Face Off Season 5. So if you guys are fans of Face Off, here's your chance.
Yeah, check that out on Netflix. It's available now.
Absolutely. And we also have another great guest on our podcast. He is my co-host on the Ghost Squad of Star Wars podcast. Please welcome for the first time on the podcast, Mr. Adam. Adam, how are you doing?
I'm doing fabulous. I'm so sorry. This stupid mic it used to light up green when it was on and purple when it was off. Now it doesn't show anything except red, and I don't know where the red came from. And red means on. When does red mean on?
It means hey, it works for our theme, right? Because we're going over top 5 horror films, correct? Member fans, this is our personal list. This is not an overall list. So fans, let us know in the comments below what your top 5 horror films are. So Rick, let's go over your number 5 pick. What's your number 5?
All right, we're coming in descending order, I guess. And this was, we talked about this in brief detail, and it's a difficult list to pick. So that's my disclaimer. This is my personal top 5 today in this interview. So tomorrow it could be different, but in general, I think this is my safe top 5. But depending on the mood that you're in, there's so many other films that you could add to this list. But I'm going to go with number 5, Cabin in the Woods.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah, what a solid film that really it revolutionized things for its year. It was a whole new take on things, sitting right there, and then somebody really took advantage of that. And the characters and creations in that movie are great. Sigourney Weaver, come on now. So yeah, that's my number 5, Cabin in the Woods.
Chris
if you haven't seen it, Chris Hemsworth, the mighty Thor,
coming in early with his career being the jock. I still remember the first time I saw Cabin in the Woods was after I had seen Thor. And so I was watching Cabin in the Woods. I was like, why is Thor here? And I didn't understand. No one had spoiled Cabin in the Woods for me. And I was watching it for the first time, and it was just like I was seeing all this happen, and Sigourney Weaver shows up, and I'm just like, this is glorious.
Yes, a lot of sleeper hits in that one, and just an iconic film unto itself. Props to the entire cast and crew on that film.
Now, would you put this, because I know there's, without spoiling this, the twist that happens in this film, did you like the twist, or would you put it like in a top 5 twists in movies, or
hands down? Yeah, the twist makes the film.
Yeah.
Without the twist, the film falls apart. It doesn't make sense. And I'm also a big Lovecraft fan, and to have that other concept toward the end of the film is also rewarding. I'm going to go spoiler free in case any of the people listening haven't seen any of these films. Please go out and check them out. Some of these may be a little older and you haven't seen them even to date. So I'm going to go kind of spoiler free. So yeah, Cabin in the Woods, if you haven't seen it, check that one out.
All right. So, Mr. Adam.
Yeah, so this might be a sleeper. I don't know. I really enjoyed this movie. It stars both Willem Dafoe and Robert Pattinson. The Lighthouse. I thought that movie was so wacky, and the ending and the like weird scene. I know you know what I'm talking about with Willem Dafoe and like Robert Pattinson looking up. Like, it was just a weird movie. I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know when I went in. I didn't know it was going to be all black and white. It was a mind-blowing experience from the top down. I think that the acting was phenomenal.
Yeah.
And the fact that they had 6 different accents each time, where like Robert Pattinson's accent changed every so often, just very slightly. And it was so fun because it really did seem like 2 people going nuts. And like it was slowly, you're by yourself, you have nothing else. For those that you haven't seen it, the premise is Robert Pattinson joins Willem Dafoe at a lighthouse, and that's it.
And
brilliantly keeps you in your seat in a modern theater in a black and white movie. The cinematography is great, the acting is superb, as limited as you might go on a film. So it's a beautiful film, a great choice, man.
Well,
it's horrifying.
He didn't win, but he won, or he was nominated for Best Supporting Actor for that role.
Yeah, he was
Rightfully
nominated for Academy Award for Best. It was also nominated for Best Cinematography in the Academy Awards, according to him. The budget was $11 million.
Yeah.
Do you know how crazy that is?
Well, you got to remember, how big was the cast? It wasn't really that big of a cast.
No, it's just 2 people, but like you have to think that entire thing was for real. Like that lighthouse was a real lighthouse. So like you're filming this whole thing like on location, right? So like whew.
This
having moved company move with an entire camera department and crew, yikes. Wow. Yeah, just knowing that they did it on location is just crazy. And then the budget for, again, Academy Award movie nominee, 11 million. It's probably the only one of very few at that tier.
So I'll go to mine, and I figured I had to go old school because I know Pat won't go to a lot of old school movies. I have only 2 recent ones on my list after 1980. The rest of them were before. My first one goes to my first Alfred Hitchcock film on my list. I'm going with The Birds. This is by far a very terrifying film. You would not think this because you would just say, oh, it's just birds attacking people. No, it is very terrifying. Like you would never, like my favorite scene still, like, I'm sorry, I'm breaking that no spoiler rule because this movie came out in 1980.
Yeah, I think you're safe with that.
Yeah, it's over 60 years old. If you guys haven't watched it, go check it out at this point. They call Alfred Hitchcock, right, the master of suspense. He's the guy who can play out a story. He set standards for horror from here on out. But The Birds is so amazing because the one scene that always sticks in my head is the ending scene. When you see them walking out and you just see these birds just looking down at them. Like, we will destroy you. Like, it's just so iconic to see that. The phone booth scene where you see the birds just swooping in, diving through the windows. It's like, what the heck happened? This is where I always tell fans too. This is The Happening done right, I guess is a good way to put it. Like, when you take M. Night Shyamalan's The Happening, which was a terrible movie, and you mix it in with something like this, with birds swooping in, killing people, doing everything like that, that's more entertaining to watch because you don't know what the bird's objective is. And I think that's what's more entertaining because you don't really know what's causing them to do this. You don't know what, and there's really no explanation of it. It's very quiet some about it. that's the whole point, because I feel like they were trying to set up maybe another one to happen and they never did it, which is, of course, normal Alfred Hitchcock.
That
Unless you
movie
get
gave me
Psycho.
an irrational fear of birds. I was absolutely terrified. And I remember I had seen a commercial accidentally because my grandmother put on a movie and I ended up seeing the commercial for it. And then my parents took me to Washington, D.C., and my dad thought it would be funny to throw some bread at my feet. And I was surrounded by pigeons. And since then, I had until like the past 5 years, I had an irrational fear of birds because of this movie. Not even watching the movie, just the commercial for the movie.
What was it?
Alfred Hitchcock is a messed up guy.
He got to people in a couple of core fears,
Yeah.
From knives to birds to
Yep.
perceptions of things with films like Vertigo. So
Yeah, it's so well. Alfred Hitchcock, I always loved his trailers when he'd come out and be like, this, like he did like with Psycho, this is the Bates Motel, or like, this is my scene. And then I love the birds one, because when you see the bird just come up on his shoulders, like, the heck?
I miss the good old days like that of the creator introducing their own film. Like what a interesting way to set it up.
Make me watch
And be
J.J.
your own
Abrams
logo,
walk
like-
outside.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you have the iconic when he comes out in his little silhouette and he goes, good evening, and he comes out and does his iconic. It's just fun to watch him. So I'm going to go to Pat for his number 5.
So my number 5 has always been a personal favorite of mine. When I think of horror, I think this director really encapsulates, the goriness and the grittiness of horror, and how disgusting and how brutal it can really be. I'm going with The Devil's Rejects as my number
Right
5.
on.
I like House of a Thousand Corpses, which, if no one knows, is the prequel. It came out in chronological order, so it was House of a Thousand Corpses, and then a few years later, The Devil's Rejects. I just like the concept of The Devil's Rejects, where they're on the run the whole time, getting away from the law, but they're also killing people, and I just think it's brutal. Sid Haig as Captain Spaulding is iconic. Like, it's one of the first things I think of when I think of Sid Haig.
Mhm.
Bill Moseley as Otis B. Driftwood is fucking awesome. The way he delivers lines, such as "I am the devil and I am here to do the devil's work." There's another line I do want to say, but I don't know if I can say it on the podcast. I'll kind of refrain from that. But and then Sherry Moon Zombie as Baby, who is in a majority of Rob Zombie's movies. Right, it's his wife. But I think those three together, you can really tell, like, I feel like the chemistry between them both really shows in the movie itself. And I just love the tandem of those three. They're awesome. I also like William Forsythe as the sheriff, Sheriff Wydell, who is kind of getting revenge from his brother dying in the first movie, which is good. Danny Trejo, who is another iconic, cameo in horror movies, right? He's in all kinds of stuff. But yeah, The Devil's Rejects, I know it's not a popular one on a lot of people's list, but it's one on mine. It's got a great soundtrack too. That ending's awesome. If you like Freebird.
Yeah, I think it really stands out in Rob Zombie's film catalog too. It captures most of the essence of, like, if you think Rob Zombie, those films match his aesthetic, I think, some of the best. And they do at every big convention. I go to Trans World and Midwest Haunters and some of these other conventions where it's all haunted house and who's going to dress up as what in horror. And Sid Haig really put it on. And you see that character everywhere, especially for a lot of the old heads that normally wouldn't dress up. They're like, yeah, I'm going as grandpa or whatever dude's name was. And yeah, it was. I think that's a great choice, man. That really doesn't get enough film recognition, but it gets a lot of horror recognition, in the genre itself.
And I think too, in my opinion, what I've noticed, and I think it's kind of turned me away from I like House of a Thousand Corpses. Don't get me wrong, but they're just two completely different movies, in my opinion. Like, I feel like how House of a Thousand Corpses is a little bit more wacky, a little bit more sadistic, and a little bit more psychological. As to The Devil's Rejects is a little bit more raunchier. It's a little bit more, how do you say? It's just violent. I mean, they're both violent. Don't get me wrong, but I think House of a Thousand Corpses, in my opinion, is like way more sadistic, like with the whole Dr. Satan thing going on. But yeah, The Devil's Rejects, man. That's I might watch that tonight actually. So.
2 movies on the list.
All right.
All right, Rick, let's go to your number 4.
My number 4. See, I was ready to go all at once, so I'm like, oh, now I'm worried. Like with some of the other things that, but it'll just mean that different appreciation is had for these different films. So this one was a tough placement, and even now, as I'm about to read it, it's still wrestling between 4 and 5. So I'm going to go ahead and land this one because of style only, not because of character, in my number 4 spot. Hellraiser. Just iconic. The first film. There's several of them that I enjoy, but the first film, when I saw it, just mind-blowing. The effects, some of the reverse photography done in that, and then the brutality, you know what I mean? And then the iconography of Pinhead himself, the rest of the Cenobites. Hellraiser for my number 4.
All right, Adam, what's your number 4?
So a little bit of backstory. I actually watched this before I watched what it is the sequel to. I didn't know they were connected. I just like Ewan McGregor. I, for number 4, have Dr. Sleep.
There we go.
I really
All
loved
right.
this movie. I had never seen The Shining. I did not know it was related to The Shining until the moment where the like finger thing happened, and I was like, "Oh, wait, that's The Shining, right?" And my partner Reagan goes, "You've not seen The Shining, and we're watching Dr. Sleep." And I was like, "Yeah, I like Ewan McGregor and Rebecca Ferguson. What's the problem?" And they were just like, "You don't know the context for any of this."
Then now
And I
you
was
have a
like,
prequel to watch.
and now I had the prequel to watch, and I loved the prequel, and I was like, hey, that's the kid that becomes Ewan McGregor. I really loved this movie. I thought it was really fun to see how everything connected when I did see The Shining. I ended up watching the director's cut that was 3.5 hours long after I watched The Shining. And it was so, like, it is the first time that I've watched a director's cut that isn't Lord of the Rings, that I've been like, I will only watch that version of it moving forward.
Yes.
And it was so well done. Ewan McGregor is a champ when it comes to bringing characters that shouldn't have personality. This is a traumatized child who has had nothing but trauma their entire life. And the mother has trauma, he has trauma, the people around him have trauma. And it was so fun to see him like go on this journey. Rebecca Ferguson as Rose the Hat was so good. The other problem that I have with Stephen King in general is that he likes to torture kids a little too much. And there's a scene in this movie where like they're killing this child, and I'm just saying, like, this is too much, man. Like, this kid shouldn't have to be acting this. Like, this is crazy. But then you see the performances and you're just like, oh, but it's so good. It's so hard to be like judgmental of using child actors in this way when it's just, the kid's fine. What is he gonna do? Like, it's not like he's the one it's actually happening to. Like, they were probably goofing around with him before and after. But Dr. Sleep was really good. The acting was phenomenal. The music was phenomenal, and the cinematography was just so excellent. And them going back to the hotel was just so interesting to me as someone who hadn't seen The Shining. I was watching this, I was seeing these iconic moments that I had seen. I had seen that hallway before. I had seen the blood coming out of the elevator before. I had seen the staircase before. But seeing it and then going back and seeing the original was just so fun. I don't recommend anybody doing that.
So I'll go to my number 4. This, I kind of had the same experience as Adam with this one when it came to Dr. Sleep. because I did not know there was a predecessor before, but you wouldn't have thought about it till an ending scene that they were connected. I'm going with Split. Split. James McAvoy. This is by far one of my favorite, probably by far my favorite role of James McAvoy. This is shows his acting props. It shows how much he really can get into a character. I've heard many times he loved doing this, and it's amazing to see that. This is, of course, an M. Night Shyamalan film. This, I will say right now, saved M. Night Shyamalan. And we know a lot of his movies. We have The Sixth Sense, of course. That's what put him on the map. But you have movies, flops, like The Last Airbender. Yeah. That movie shall never be named ever again on this podcast, other than on the worst list. But and after that, you've had just misses. Like The Village I know is kind of up and down with love and hate for the movie. But then you get Split. And Split was one I never watched until actually a class. I was in college. We did a horror class and we had to compare text to a movie, and so the class had to come to a unanimous vote, and it was down to this and The Mist. This movie, of course, it follows Kevin Wendell Crumb, and throughout the movie you kind of see all 23 personalities come out that lead to the eventual 24th personality, which is the Beast. This is just a fun tale because you never know what you're going to deal with. There are fun scenes in this movie. There is very gory scenes in this film. One of my creepiest still images that's still in my head is when he's at the where Casey is behind the bars and you just see him start pulling the bars away and you just see the little like tight grin he has. It's like, oh my god.
I've not seen this movie. Is this the movie that ends with Sam Jackson in the movie?
So this is where you see Bruce Willis. So, have you ever heard of the movie Unbreakable with Bruce Willis and Samuel Jackson? So, we, at the end, in a credit scene, we get Bruce Willis. And then that's when we find out, because he says his name, which is David Dunn, which is his role from Unbreakable. So we know.
So they're connected, but you didn't know that they were connected until the end of it.
And then that's when you get Glass.
Gotcha.
With all three of them in it.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you for catching me up. I have not seen those movies. So
I need to watch them myself too. He's told me a lot about them. I just haven't got a chance to watch.
It is by far, and I know this might be a hot take. This is by far my favorite M. Night Shyamalan film. I am not a big fan of The Sixth Sense. I watch it. I have no problem with it. It's just not my cup of tea. So when it really comes down to it, I've enjoyed Split because there's so many twists, turns. The personalities play a big part of it. You see that some of the good personalities are held hostage by the bad ones. So it's actually kind of neat to see how 23 personalities really can live in somebody and how they're all used effectively. But it's such a great story. I recommend this to anybody. It's very dark, grim. It's such a well shot movie for M. Night Shyamalan.
Yeah, McAvoy is a standout performance on that for sure.
Like, yeah, it's by far over all the other roles I have seen him in. This is by far my favorite of them. It's sad because he was probably still the standout in Glass, and that movie was just bad. That movie should have never been made or waited so many years, because Glass was released like 2 or 3 years after Split was, and the difference between years on Unbreakable and Split was like near 20 years. So if they would have waited a little bit longer.
I think as Star Wars fans, we can understand good performances with really crappy scripts.
Agree.
Because, again, standout performance by Ewan McGregor and Natalie Portman in Attack of the Clones with a very shoddy script.
Truth was told on this day.
Yeah. But we go over to Patrick for his number 4.
Patty B!
My number 4, man, it's one that I've come to like really love over the years. I'll be honest with you, when I was younger, I never really watched it until I was older, and then I was like, holy shit, this movie's awesome. Like, how did I not see this? I'm going with Poltergeist as my number 4.
Ooh. yes.
Uh,
Yeah, that's an internal family debate on what age you can watch that movie, because they wouldn't let me show my daughter that for the
yeah,
longest
man,
time.
there's a lot of darkness behind it, right?
Yeah, it scarred me as a kid. That's
The
awesome.
one from 82 or the one from 05? Because I've not seen either.
The one from
82.
Me too.
Craig T. Nelson.
The movie
I appreciate
that
the early
changed
scars from that film.
for cinema forever, because there were so many laws that were passed after that and Exorcist.
Real skeletons in the Fool.
Is that a movie that I should watch with the lights on, or is this just
Oh
like
no,
a
the more
you gotta
theatric,
Stay in
and
the theme of
the
dark.
best, and not even gore, supernatural.
Yeah.
Tell them
Interesting.
about it, Patrick.
There
Yeah,
you go.
Cutting B?
So basically, what it is they're building this housing development on top of this unknown Indian burial ground. And
Oh
this,
no.
you know it, and I think I want to say, because it's been a little
Whose
bit.
bad idea was that?
Well, he's a home developer. The guy's family, he's a home developer, or I should say like a neighborhood developer. Anyway, his little daughter gets abducted, through the spirits, through the TV. I don't know if you ever heard of the
It's
famous.
not known to him at that point. He's got a boss who lets him know later about the oops on the development.
Oh.
So he's innocent
Gotcha.
as far as the dad.
Okay. Okay. Cool.
They're
If we're
trying-
gonna talk about it, I want to give him the disclaimer. Like,
No,
I just wanted to make sure that like this guy was just like, yeah, I think it's a great idea that we put it on.
No.
yeah, Dad of the
Like,
Year.
yeah, your daughter deserves to get taken if you're the idiot who said yes to that.
Yeah,
great performances in that film.
Craig T.
I'll put it on my list. Apparently.
Oh, if you haven't seen it, that's a treat.
Glowing
You're
with
old
a
enough.
trippy movie.
You're old enough to watch
I think I might be old enough.
it.
One thing that freaks me out, dude, to this day is when they hire the paranormal lady to come to the house, right, and try to communicate with the daughter. And when she communicates with the spirits and the daughter through all that, it freaks me out. Like, doesn't freak it just it's scary, man. Like
Steven Spielberg, if that needs any
wow.
help behind it, like some fantastic industrial light and magic, just a bunch of great things in that
And,
film.
a lot of people I guess more like conspiracy theory, but a lot of people think that there's some unluckiness to this movie with the people that are involved in it in real life. Both of the kids that are in the movie actually died within 5 years of the movie's release.
Yeah, it
Wow.
lent itself toward the bad news side of things, if you wanted to be speculative on that side, if you believed in those things. And my daughter, little girl, blonde hair, so knowing then if you did find out that girl was also not around in real life, so there was a bunch of reasons like, don't show that to her. It'll scare her. Like, you're
I
scared
think
of it.
she's
I was
old
like,
enough
yeah,
now,
that's
right?
the point, because I love being scared of some of the things in that movie, from
Yeah.
trees to clowns to swimming pools to meatloaf, like whatever you might be afraid of it. So, yeah, it's great.
I'm
and
seeing the
very
little
realistic.
commercial going, and this looks horrifying. What are you talking about?
This
Yeah.
was like a family film. It was the big hit next to E.T. almost. Like, it was
So a
one
bunch
of
of
those.
people went to this movie and they were just like,
Oh,
yeah, I'm
yeah.
gonna take my kids, and then they like
Well-
realized they like very quickly that this was
Well,
horrifying.
Let's put it this way, okay?
It was a different time in the 80s.
And you got to remember too. You got to
Early-
remember too. I do feel like that movie gets a lot of heavy inspiration from another movie that was from the 70s, The Exorcist, and it was the same thing.
This would have scarred me for life.
It did. That's why I loved it, and I wanted to scar my child.
And now you work in horror.
It was just one
I'm
of those
so excited
things,
to
man.
watch this.
Yeah,
Oh,
Whose
tell
pick
me
was
which part
this?
gets you.
Whose pick was this?
It's
That was
Patrick's.
Pat's.
fun.
Pat,
Fantastic
Patty
choice.
B. What a pick, man!
Yeah, props.
One more
props,
thing-
I'm so
props.
excited to see this.
I know how I said that, with the kids in the movie died in real life. So the other girl, the teenage daughter, she got murdered later that year of the movie's release by her boyfriend.
What?
Yeah, that's
What?
crazy. Yeah,
Well-
and I had to get braces shortly after this film, and also not helpful.
Rick, are you okay, buddy?
From this
Are you
film,
doing
no,
all right?
no, that's I'm glad it's on one of our lists. I had to take it off to include some other choices, but yeah, it definitely hit my list at number one for a minute,
This
and then
looks
it kept getting bumped.
horrifying.
I'm glad that Pat and Adam have done that, because Adam took The Lighthouse, which barely nicked off my list. And
Lighthouse,
Pat done
fantastic film.
Poltergeist.
Yeah, there's so many that are they're on a longer list. Trust me, folks. But I had to go to top 5, so shuffle happened.
Top 10 would have taken us 3 hours.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Agreed.
So,
Yeah.
So
Let's go, Rick. What's your
3.
number?
All right.
3?
I'm like, where's my little? I know what it is. So, yeah. Here's my post-it note. I wanted to make sure I had to keep it handy, but because I swapped it around, giving Hellraiser the number 4 spot, mainly because of the cinematography and the just overall standout acting by Mr. Bruce Campbell. Evil Dead 2.
There we go. That made my honorables as well.
I've
Oh
never seen it.
man, I love Evil Dead, but Evil Dead 2 is Evil Dead with a budget and just is a fantastic film. They're so similar. They might as well be the same film. And that's where I was in another conversation. We were talking about books, and a book came up, and it was not the book that I thought. I was thinking the Necronomicon from Evil Dead, and H.P. Lovecraft, which is another reason why I love Evil Dead.
Do you need
because
to
of the
watch Evil
Necronomicon.
Dead to watch Evil Dead 2?
No, because they're effectively the same film. I would even recommend, and this may be heresy, if you're going to start with one, just start with Evil Dead 2. If you want to go back,
either.
if you want to go back and watch the same movie, like it's like was it the Mexican and the first film, Robert Rodriguez. There's like a Desperado. Like there's different versions of the same film. He got a bigger budget with the second version with Antonio Banderas. But if you watch the first film that they shot in Mexico, it's his Kevin Smith version of the same movie.
Gotcha.
So Sam Raimi, and this is part of the standout stuff that I love about this is also my book here, signed
By the Bruce.
Come Get Some. You know what I mean? There's so much.
That's awesome.
So much in the iconic things in Evil Dead 2. The way the camera was used by Sam Raimi, strapping it to a piece of wood and just zooming it around the forest here in Tennessee. This is one of our local shout outs set in Tennessee. When we're on the map of all 50 states, what's your horror movie? We get Evil Dead. And
Nice.
I really love that because of the effects in that film, K&B effects. A lot of them just stand out. At the time, the 80s were full of this, just if riding off the 70s of some of the other things on my list into this. All right, well, now we've learned a lot from that. We're going to go just full off with splatter and gore and effects and different things. Foam latex really opened up a lot of doors, and they just went wild with this film. Stop motion animation. There's so much to enjoy in Evil Dead 2.
Is the whole movie stop motion?
No, but parts of it are. The part of the creatures, like some films, are done using only stop motion.
Like Battle for Endor, the 1983 straight to TV film that starred the Ewoks.
I would go more like Howard the Duck and the end creature in that.
Yes.
Awesome.
No,
awesome,
it's
awesome.
just great different. So it's a mixed blend. So you've got corpses dancing around, you've got evil hands that are separated from bodies running around on their own. Just the performance of the man himself, just Bruce Campbell, would carry that film if all the other levels weren't just top notch too. So that film is not lacking in any category. It delivers on the concept. If you want Evil Dead, go straight in and go for the one they had a little bit more money for, so they could really deliver on the premise.
Now, Rick,
Evil Dead 2.
List now.
Yeah, Rick, let me ask you this too, because I've heard this too. Do you feel that after Evil Dead 2, do you feel like the Army of Darkness and the
love Army of Darkness?
And
the show is spectacular. I love the show. For any of the people that I feel were kind of fall off, or I didn't like where they went with that, I think maybe the show brought a lot of those people back, mainly because that show was soaked red. I mean, it was if you wanted horror, and is this okay to show on TV? Gore, it really was a bloody mess. And then again, character acting. some of the main people, that is their new rise to fame, and some of the cast on that is phenomenal. And then you get Xena Warrior Princess shows up out of nowhere. Like, what more could you want from a show? But yeah, no, the franchise, I think itself is very strong, and you have a lot of room to go with it. And then the remake, also a different take entirely on it, as far as, well, you're going a little more for full horror than, Sam Raimi. Obviously, his style is always got a bit of comical or a fourth wall breaking in its camera movement. If you're going to go through the woods, like, you're going to stretch some limits, and he still does that, and you can see it works with Spider-Man, because some of the moves for the camera are really intense, and you can see why that was why that was a great choice.
It's on my list now. I'm gonna watch
Evil Dead 2.
Evil Dead 2.
So Adam, let's go over your number 3.
Yeah, so my number 3 is actually a TV series, Netflix. It's called The Fall of the House of Usher. If you've been around me enough, you know how much I love Mike Flanagan. His monologues are some of the best writing in television. I, as an actor myself, I love a good monologue, and the actors, let's just go down the right. Kate Siegel, Carla Gugino, Bruce Greenwood, Mary McDonnell, Raoul Cooley, Zach Gilford, and of course, Mark Hamill.
Mark Hamill. Yeah.
And Mark Hamill was a different role for Mark.
A fantastic performance.
I really thought he did a great job. You could tell he loved the character a lot, and he understood what his job was as that character. Now, it'll always have a little bit of Luke Skywalker, I think, but he did a great job of trying to separate this character from anything else he's done before. And the writing was fantastic. The acting was fantastic. The music was fantastic. It gave me a fear of my own cat. And it's a quick watch. I think it's only 8-10 episodes. It's over, and it tells a full story. And if you like Edgar Allan Poe, there is a lot to like here. Thankfully, I have a partner who is a little bit of a Poe snob and understands a lot of it. So they were able to explain a lot of the things that I missed in it. But and Rick, you can probably tell us a little bit about how it was probably made, but the way that they did the prosthetics for the ways that these kids get screwed up by their dad's choices and by their aunt's choices are so interesting. And seeing like the burnt aesthetic and the like torn apart aesthetic, it had to have taken them so long just to get that going. But the way that it was filmed, the way that it was written, the way that these monologues are put together, and the acting just blew my mind. I am a huge fan, and it's my number 3. I had to put it on there.
Yeah, to your partner's knowledge and snobbery, I was kind of that median as me and my wife watched this film, and I'm sure that they were sitting there doing the same thing that I was, which is, how are they going to tie all these different stories that I know together in a way that I'm going to accept?
Yep.
And masterfully done. It's a great series that takes enough liberties and stays true at the same time. And if they accepted it, I also accepted it, being a little bit of a skeptic going in, but the acting is so good. The directing is so good. And like you said, it's like 8 episodes. It's very digestible. I will, as a little warning, well, we're talking horror, so just with all these things, but the effects are disturbing level. Very well executed, and a variety of different ways to die, as set up by the author himself. So nothing is new. These are in books that you can read, and if you want more depth in any of the stories, I challenge you to definitely read the books by the author himself. But this series, great choice, man. Great choice.
So I'll go to my number 3, and this comes from an unusual director, because when you think of this guy, you think of comedy, but not as a director, but you think of him as an actor in comedies. And no, I'm not going to Jordan Peele, even though he was very tempting. But I'm going to what I feel...
Kenneth Branagh.
No.
Hey, Frankenstein, not bad.
It's a good
Not bad.
pick, but no. But I'm going with a movie that I would say is probably the best horror silent film within the last 2 decades, or quite some time. Put that. And it has a real life married couple. I'm going with A Quiet Place. I enjoyed this film because I love the aspect of it's silent. There's really not a lot of music either, and it keeps you that intense what's going to happen kind of thing. I love that there's sign languaging through the whole film. It's just a really well shot film. This comes from the director and actor of the film, John Krasinski.
Can I just do a hot take that the second one was better than the first one
Oh,
because
I
of
agree.
Cillian Murphy?
This is by far, yeah, Cillian Murphy. Well, by far, Cillian Murphy is a great actor. We know that now.
Love
because of
Cillian Murphy.
Oppenheimer. We get that through Scarecrow.
We knew that in Peaky Blinders.
Yeah, he is such a great actor. I love him and Dejimon Hansu's roles in those movies. In the second one, the two, they're like the duo to me. I like them helping out Emily Blunt's role and the two kids.
Yeah.
But
Quiet Place was a great movie.
Yeah, it's such a great entertaining film because the whole time it's you got to be quiet. One of my most intense scenes is when you see Evelyn go in the tub to try to get Bert, and you see that creature, and it's like, oh my god, she's gonna die.
Great creature design too. How
And
about that?
I thought how they set her up where you don't know if she died or not, and then all of a sudden she comes in with a shotgun and shoots one of them, is amazing. I thought that was really well done. Emily Blunt, this is by far one of my favorite roles with her, and I love Emily Blunt. She is one of my favorite actresses. I just love how John Krasinski's really showing off or not just his acting chops here, but he's also showing off his directorial chops.
Yeah, you can tell, and several of the other people around him in his circle in different interviews will talk about his dedication to his kids, and you can see that influence, and that's part of what makes that a great film, is that he understands family, and that comes through in the writing and comes right through in the film that you watch, and that's really important. Some of these are spectacle films on my list for sure, but that one is one definitely on a longer list, not a much longer one, but because you really care about the characters and you really feel the experience that you're going to. True to the title, the sound design in that film is phenomenal.
So good.
I'd still love, like you talk about that too. I love the scene when they takes the kids in behind the waterfall and they say they can't hear us here, so we can actually talk. And it's just so well done because
and if you've been around a real waterfall, like it's very relatable elements. If it really taps into that human side of experience, he does that really well in films, and he's a great actor too.
I never knew that about corn silos either. I didn't know that if you fall into one, you're going to die.
God. Yeah.
And when that happened, I looked up, like, is that for real? Like, can you actually die? And I found out that they're just now creating robots that can get you out, because it has like giant propellers that they like send into the silo, and you have to like grab on and like you pull yourself back out. That's the only way that they can get you out without emptying the entire silo.
Yeah, it's a similar thing if you're at the beach or someplace. Be mindful if there's aerated water, if it's all white and frothy, it's harder to swim in. You just don't. It's treacherous. So be careful.
So
out
scary.
There. No silos unless it's empty and you can talk in
it. All right,
Patty B coming in hot.
Speaking of coming in hot, number 3, I think, is essential for any horror movie fan. It is an iconic movie, rewatchability to the top tier. I know if I see this movie on, I'm gonna click on it. I'm gonna watch it. I think it's Wes Craven's masterpiece. I'm going with Scream from 1996.
You guys have all named an honorable mention on my list now, so thanks, Pat.
It's crazy that that's an honorable mention for people.
Well, the sad thing is I'm the guy who wore the mask, and yet
can't
even give the movie any love, right? No,
it's a great modern for the time. Like, really had its finger on the pulse of what was going on and how to tap in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think it's got a great cast. I think that really makes the movie. With Nev Campbell, Courtney Cox, David Arquette, Skeet Ulrich, Drew Barrymore with her little cameo in the intro of the movie.
Matthew
known for
Lillard.
cameo roles.
Yeah, one of the most parodied films too. Just its
Yeah.
influence in culture was really standout. That you have that mask and the availability of it says a lot to the strength of that franchise.
I wish I had the dopey mask from, or not the dopier version of the ghost mask from.
With the tongue sticking out.
Love that
Could you
mask.
say that might be one of the highest grossing Halloween masks of all time?
It has to be.
Probably because of the affordability was accessible.
Yeah.
And it dropped it was everywhere, and you could make that. You got a black robe, or black something you could put on.
was
That's
so
really all you
easy.
needed. Yeah.
I remember
plastic knife.
My buddy came as that guy, as Ghostface, for Halloween without telling anyone, and we were all expecting him to be Waluigi. And so everybody was Mario characters, and then he shows up
What
as
a shock.
Ghostface, and we're like, "What happened?" And he goes, "My dog ate my costume."
Well, you just
And
say
his dog
Waluigi
had
died, and then
his dog had ripped up the costume, and he was like, "If anyone in the Mario universe was going to be Ghostface, it would be Waluigi."
exactly.
So he just
Yeah.
did it, and it was like because he could go on Halloween day to Kroger or Walmart or
Yes.
whatever and get that
Yeah.
mask, and it was so like Rick
Everywhere.
saying, it was
Yeah.
this
cost
was
me
a
like
great
10
pick from
bucks
Patty.
at a Walmart store. Like it's accessible. It's easy. You can wear
Yeah.
anything. It doesn't have to be the cloak. It could just be anything to make it horror. And I think the
And-
show did that too for it, where you didn't have to always wear a cloak. It was something different.
Yeah, if you haven't seen it, there's a whole third act reveal there that really I think was the big, here's the shocker at the end, this big reveal kind of moment that really hooked people. And then the young heartthrobs across the board. It was just set up for success. And like you said, Wes Craven, great job again, master of the franchise.
Little side note: I love Rose McGowan's death in this with the whole
Yes,
garage door right behind.
garage door, baby.
Everybody in this movie was so pretty. Like everybody in this movie was just like everyone was so pretty, and it became a thing where you're just like, I don't want them to be bad because they're all just so good to look at. Don't put the mask on. Like, why are we masking up here?
What was it, Dewey?
Yeah.
Oh man, this David Arquette. Oh my goodness, just great acting.
Young Jamie Kennedy's in this, dude.
Yeah, that's what I was about to
Young
say.
Jamie
Everybody's
Kennedy.
Jamie Kennedy in this film. Like all of us as horror watchers, we're the one idiot that go, "Don't go in that room." I swear, if you go in that room, you're gonna die.
It in Zombieland had that in common, where they pulled out the trope and they put the trope in the film. So just great. It was very meta, very self-reflective. Great choice.
Are you
Pat.
talking about the Bill Murray scene where he walks up when they're watching the movies in the theater?
Saw a zombie and they shoot him.
Well, that too. But the rules of how to survive the film, kind of laid out. Scream was one of the first to do that in that kind of way.
Great pick, Patty B.
Thanks, man.
What's Rick's number 2? We're getting to the good
boy.
stuff.
Back to me, huh? Number 2 on the list. And we're just going to keep talking about it if somebody else picks my number 1, because I will talk about my number 1 until the end of time. But my number 2, a very, very close number 2. One of the few that are set here in the country, An American Werewolf in London. An American Werewolf. You haven't seen American Werewolf in London? It's set overseas, but the main character is an American guy on tour. So he's across traveling, doing a backpacking gig with his friend Jack.
1961 or 1981?
Yes. So they go off on a little backpacking adventure. They stop in to get a little beverage and are warned, you don't want to be out here. Steer clear of the moors. You don't want to be out here at night. They're like, we're American. We're on a backpacking hunt. You guys are creeping us out. We're gonna head on. Cool. Later. And true to the title, there's a werewolf at play here, and one of the two survives. And the fact that you get to deal with this relationship and this dynamic of afterlife, along with the shape-shifting element, probably the most standout transformation of all time, still to this day, of being able to watch a human to werewolf transformation, full wolf, quadrupedal, on all fours, running loose in London, wreaking havoc.
It says here Frank Oz and Jim Henson are in this movie.
Just like I said, fantastic for working on different elements. You know, you got
that's
just
crazy.
Yeah, it's just a spectacular film. So An American Werewolf in London. There is a sequel, American Werewolf in Paris, where they came into the digital age, so they go to CG werewolves and things. Too modern, missed it by that much kind of deal.
This werewolf
had Bush
great
on the soundtrack, which had a good soundtrack, but you know, but yeah, on the sequel. But the original, there's just dream sequences. It shows the effect mentally, the psychosis that you deal with if you're infected with the werewolf. Full mythos to the cure at the end, and I love an ending that just doesn't go the way that that you might feel you need to for the audience. Like I'm here for the story, not to please you. You should like this because it's true to the story. And if you're here for the story, then you'll appreciate this ending that may not have your hero do so well at the end.
Well, I think it's like you brought up a good point too, that it focuses on the psychosis of the werewolf himself. And I think that's the first time we've seen that since the 1941 werewolf movie. It's the only time we really see them actually study the psychology of the werewolf alone compared to actually his acts.
Yeah, and you guys went full spoiler, so I'm gonna pull it off on American Werewolf in London, man. I know you haven't seen it, but that's a lot of years, bro. So yeah, this is another one too that I saw as a kid. So most of these that are now on my top of the list are going to be because I saw them when I was very young, thanks to my dad. He was the same with my mom. They were like, if you like it, and we're the guardian, we're going to go check it out with you, and we'll talk with you about whatever's in this movie. But it's a movie, and you're into movies and the monsters and all that stuff, so we'll support that. And I'm grateful for both my parents for that. But Dad took me to them, and his friend Jack, it just decomposes throughout the film.
Oh my gosh!
And as do any of the other people that he kills. And one of the most ominous sounding creatures in film history, like the sound of this werewolf is so unique and terrifying at the same time. It just sets the bar. This is what this sounds like. And creeping through a subway tunnel, just places you wouldn't want to deal with a werewolf of any size. Porn theater, because it's London. You go sit in a movie theater. You know, it's just, where is this movie going? And again, great performances throughout. It's got a bit of date to it, but the effects stand up. And again, one of the just most fantastic werewolf transformation scenes you'll ever see.
Yeah.
That's so awesome. I'm excited. It's on my list now.
Yep.
Yeah, bro.
And going back about your list, let's go to your number 2.
So I want to talk about Annihilation.
Oh,
starring Natalie Portman and Oscar Isaac.
Yeah.
Yeah.
First of all, I have had a crush on Natalie Portman since I was a kid. It was the first poster that had a female on my wall. I think that movie, I don't know if people think it's a good movie or not, but it's a beautiful movie to watch.
Yeah, it is.
The effects that they used, the color schemes of everything, though, just, I never knew what was actually happening. And then it all came together at the end, and I was like, oh, that's weird. But I loved the vibe of the movie, the music I still listen to this day. The acting was really fun. It was one of those movies that I think got the Force Awakens bump because of Oscar Isaac. And so like people were going to go see it because it had 2 Star Wars people in it. At least like a lot of my friends, that's why they went to go see it. I didn't know it was a horror movie when I went to go see it. And then I started watching. I was like, this is terrifying.
Well, remember the grizzly bear scene The bear
Yeah.
scene alone is gruesome enough.
Yeah, I was captivated by what happened to the person against the wall, which was
Yes.
very Last of Us, if you're familiar with
Yeah.
that franchise, or for people who haven't seen Annihilation, just a person who looks like they're just blown apart into a plant life.
Yeah.
What is going on here? It's very surreal, that film. It's great.
Aesthetically, that movie was absolutely beautiful to look at.
Yeah.
And I think that there are very few movies these days that just focuses so wholeheartedly on the aesthetic over everything else. And it almost seemed like the story, the characters all took a backseat to experiencing this world. And I really enjoyed that. And it was a fun time. It was a good mystery and a really suspenseful ending.
Yeah. I'm going with my number 2. I'm going to my other director on if I had to choose a Mount Rushmore of directors, and I'm going to John Carpenter. Going with the 1978 Halloween. This is now I'll put it this way. I'm going to give you guys a hint to my number 1. There is a connection between an actor in Halloween and an actor in my number 1 pick. So that's all I'm going to say. We'll wait till my number 1 pick. But Halloween, this was actually a fun story. My first horror movie I ever watched. This is 10-year-old me wanting to be watching movies with my mom. She got into comics with me, so I always wanted to get something into her. And I was petrified. I did not like Michael Myers. And Michael Myers creeped me out. Now, shocker. My mom showed me The Strangers shortly after, about a few years after. Yeah, I already got all those vibes back where I was looking out the window, making sure nobody was out there, everything. Like, that's how I got with Halloween. I was sitting there, I was like, is Michael Myers standing out behind the curtains? What's going on? Like,
props to the parents, right?
I think it's there's just a creepy vibe to it. You don't know what's truly happening. And you don't get that till later on why Michael Myers is targeting Laurie Strode. We don't know until later on. But my favorite role in this is Donald Pleasance, who plays Samuel Loomis. I love Loomis throughout this whole film because it's like, okay, he's the man who has studied Michael Myers the most. So now it's trying to see where, pretty much like retracing where would he go. Every year, this is a tradition. Every year we watch this movie for Halloween. Every year we watch this, and it's fun to watch. Like, my mom will go full on, watch the whole series, and then watch the newer ones. I'm just like, I'm fine with the first 2. And then I'm fine with it picking up where it did in the recent ones. Like, I don't give a crap about H2O or any of them. But Jamie Lee Curtis, this was her first standout role. This is my favorite role of hers of all time, and still will be to this very day. I still enjoy her as an actress in this film. This is just a fun movie to watch on a Friday night, lights off, and you just sit there, just enjoy a puddle of popcorn and waiting for the scares. The music alone is iconic. It's just really well done, really well shot. I still remember the scene behind the bushes where he stands out and then he walks back and then it's not him and it's a cop. It's really creepy how John Carpenter shot that, and it's so well done. So give props to Halloween. I cannot make that list.
Yeah, if like some of the other films on this list, there's a great The Films That Made Us. There's also a great that type of documentary on the making of Halloween and how resourceful they had to be with so little, and what a iconic film that they made. The story behind the shape, the mask of Michael Myers, all of that stuff. And it was, again, one of those that tapped on a primal thing that most people could really relate to, somebody in your neighborhood creeping around. Like, it's just scary by itself. And then the damage that dude does. That's a great choice, man. Patrick.
My number 2.
Don't make a bad choice.
Oh, no bad choices, just happy accidents.
Oh, wow.
We briefly spoke on it earlier, not on this occasion, but off air. This one is a childhood favorite of mine, and rewatchability is key, in my opinion, when I'm making these lists. I love the creativity of this movie. I love the concept of this movie. It's 13 Ghosts. Like I said, I know
Underappreciated, yes.
very under. Adam, go watch it. All right.
That's the one that I forgot that we talked
Yeah,
about.
be sure, write that down. Write that down.
Jot it down. I love the concept of the story, where Tony Shalhoub's character, his wife dies in a fire. He's kind of in financial ruins right now with 2 kids and a nanny. He inherits this badass glass house from this distant cousin of his,
Multi-million dollar home. Yeah, just architecture, just brilliant.
And his cousin, who is played by F. Murray Abraham, which I think is pretty cool. They don't realize what they're getting themselves into until they move in. Matthew Lillard, on the other hand, is fully aware of what's going on and what
Of course he is.
They transported these ghosts into this house, and there's a certain code, I guess, that breaks, that opens up the doors. No, but like I said, when it comes to the creativity of all the different characters within this movie, of all the different ghosts, I think it's so badass. Like the jackal, the dude that has like the hammers and the nails sticking out of his head. There is the one that had the fully caged, or does he have like a bird? Not a bird cage, but Rick, maybe help me out with this. You know what I'm talking about? The guy that has
Yeah, it's a square box. I think it's a female character, to be honest.
Yeah.
I can't remember her name. There's several of them. One's a little kid. One's just half of a body, just the body.
torso
There's the torso. Yeah, there's the beautiful woman.
with cuts on her and everything.
Yeah, they each have their own thing. And it's a great film that you should definitely take a look at. We'll leave some of these out so you can have some more to get into, but there are 13 of them, and it's underrated. It was hard to get access to, which I think leads to it's undervalued because it was only on DVD for the longest time.
Did it not?
So that's what I was about to ask. I'm seeing that it was nominated for 4 things and won 1 thing. It was nominated by the American Academy of Science Fiction and Horror for Best Horror Film. It did not win. It was nominated for a Golden Trailer Award. It did not win. It won for Best Makeup and Creature Effects at the Fangora Chainsaw Awards. And then it was nominated for the Stinkers Bad Movie Awards. It was 2001's nominee for Worst Supporting Actress, Shannon Elizabeth.
Oh, dude, don't. That's my girl right there, bro.
Yeah, why is she getting hate?
I don't know. It's right here.
Because she was pretty. I think that's just some hate. What does the fan response say that's not Rotten Tomatoes? What is the real?
Let's see.
You gave a list earlier that had some different metrics.
So it has a 5.6 when it comes to critic score, 19 Rotten Tomatoes, 30% and Metacritic, and then 86% likes the movie.
Yeah.
Again, 80% of the people that actually watch this film, 80%, and it was hard to get to, so you almost need to seek it out.
I'm gonna put it right now. This might get us heat, Pat, for movie podcast, but anybody who listens to Rotten Tomatoes, don't. They literally wrote, I remember reading, they were like, I think it was for Batman Superman, it's too dark. DC Comics is dark. It is supposed to take you to a darker feeling in comics.
Yeah, I'm not sure where they got their metrics. There was some speculation on whether those were bought or sold.
It's a bad movie, don't get me wrong, but if you're going to judge a movie because it's too dark, there's a problem.
I think there's a problem when you name a website after rotten fruit. Okay, so
yeah, the hate is almost implied.
Than that, you know.
Yeah, that's already a complaint. Like it should be like roses and tomatoes, I guess. That way, at least had a positive part.
So before we go over our number ones, I want to ask all of us to go rifle off movies that just missed your list.
Hereditary.
Hereditary was one of mine.
Hereditary was one of them. I can't, with good conscience, put on my list because that movie was horrifying on so many levels.
I can never look at Toni Collette the same way.
No,
was fantastic in that movie.
The acting was
Mhm.
absolutely
She was
fabulous.
actually nominated for Best Actress for that.
Yeah,
Like she
It-
was up there.
it was so good. But that movie was so hard to watch because of how real it was for in my brain. Like so much of it was real. Of like this again, it comes down to children dealing with trauma. Really frustrates me in horror, and that's so much of horror is kids dealing with things. And it was such a big deal. Like the girl, like spoiler alert, I guess, but in the first 30 minutes, the little girl has her head decapitated.
Yeah.
And you're like watching this happen, and you're just like,
Okay.
oh,
You just realize what you got yourself into.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I had no idea going in. And
Yeah.
Toni Collette, phenomenal
Yeah, she's
acting job
very underrated
this-
actress. Just proved
in
it.
this show, in this movie.
Yeah.
And having to sit through that movie was so difficult. The other one that I had, which I don't like this movie, but I understand why people like it. And I understand, like, my partner, this is one of their favorite movies to show people, and it's Vivarium.
Ooh.
And that movie
Mhm.
bothered me in so many ways because I did not like watching it. The aesthetic choices were so off-putting that it made me dislike watching it. And that was part of the movie being the movie, was it was supposed to make you feel uncomfortable watching it because everything is so fake, because everything is so manufactured and artificial. And like, you see Jesse Eisenberg, it's one of the only films that I actually enjoyed his performance in. I'm not a huge Jesse Eisenberg fan.
We all know
But he did such a good job. And Imogen Poots, which I love her name, Imogen Poots is so good in this movie, and it was mind-blowing, but I hated watching it, and I don't think I'll ever watch that movie again. But for a horror movie, it made me so uncomfortable that I don't want to watch it again.
Yeah.
Which I think was its job. So
Rick, what about you? Did you have any honorables that just missed your list?
Yeah, I think there were two, one or two got covered already, thankfully, to some of the other choices. And I'm really glad that my number one has not yet been covered. So two that were honorable mentions were in descending order. 7.
Oh, I'd say I look at that. I was wondering if somebody was going to put that as horror.
Yeah, that's the same reason that my other choice is higher, but also didn't quite. It was an honorable mention instead. 7 really stood out. It hit the way you're talking about, where the one of my friends did not. I don't even want to go to movies anymore. Like it affected them that dramatically. And rightfully so. It's very disturbing content. If you don't know, seven deadly sins, a serial killer utilizing that as his logic behind how he kills people. There's one of these like, I hate that this fucking person's in this movie, but a great performance by Kevin Spacey. Morgan Freeman and Brad Pitt's their style, and to David Fincher's credit, man, just he has a lot of films that are on a lot of other lists for me as a director, but that character study, the framing, the setup, the overall tone of the film is so melancholy, and then the final reveal at the end, just spectacular as far as that level. Psychological thriller, I thought, maybe a versus horror.
Yeah.
And to the other edge, this one of the best horror films of all time. But I was like, a lot of people will consider it sci-fi, but Alien is a horror movie.
Yep.
What a terrifying horror movie. It's just set in space. So science fiction, all day. It's science fiction because science and space is the fiction of going there. But Monster in the House, what a terrifying type of scenario and brilliant design. Just to this day, I'm a visual person, and the Ridley Scott's just handling of the film, his aesthetic taste and choices, and then the setup of these characters, standout performance, legendary for Sigourney Weaver.
Yeah.
Launching of a franchise, but that H.R. Giger design is just so fantastic. when you see the xenomorph for the first time in its full glory. Chest burster scene.
To Rick's
Ash
credit,
the robot, like, come on.
To Rick's credit as well, to say that this is horror for anybody that's watching that may not agree with that. It created, because of that, we have one of the greatest horror video games of all time with Alien Isolation.
Yeah.
I want
Yes.
you to try and play
Terrifying.
Alien Isolation in the dark without getting scared that you will die.
I'll say
Because-
right now, I peed my pants playing that game. Because
It
I
was
like, "Holy
it
crap."
was honestly one of the only horror video games that actually scared me. I was sitting there going, like, I could feel my whole body tensing because that alien was walking by as I was in that, like, the
Yeah.
cabinet.
Any
and I
of the
was
little
seeing it
places you
walk
could
by,
hide. Oh my
and
god.
it's if you can
Great.
create that level of a horror game out of your movie, I don't care what you say, I'll label it as horror.
Now, let me ask this, Rick. Do you now, since you look at the Xenomorphs, and which I agree with you, Aliens to me, for anybody who does not think that's a horror movie, it is a horror movie. Would you look at Predator the same way?
No.
You would not look at Predator the same. Like,
No.
my thing is
So
how his
there-
face reveals.
I do. I look at Predator as a horror movie. It's a horror action, horror drama. So Alien is a horror drama. And Predator is a horror movie because it's a thing that's out there killing everybody. Like, hands down, it might as well be Jason. It's just a different setup because it's sci-fi, but it's a horror sci-fi. What is the thing doing? It's killing everybody. And in a horror, he's stringing up their bodies, hanging like that was. Predator's got some shocking stuff in it. And also, because of that edge that it rides, it is not on my list because of that pretty much alone.
I'd still, that's
But Alien, I think, like Ash says in the movie, it's a perfect organism.
Yeah.
It just is. And anybody that wants to talk about whether it's a horror movie, the marketing behind it was in space. No one can hear you scream.
Yeah. It's
Brilliant. Brilliant marketing. Just everything behind it. The dude storyboarded his own movie. Like, come on, Ridley.
So I'll go over mine. Some of them have already been listed. Scream, and we've talked about Black Swan because I do feel like that's a great Natalie Portman one. Hereditary, we've talked about now. A fun one I have is another video game based thing, and I know it's a very, very.
If you say
corny
Resident Evil,
film. No, it's Five Nights.
I was like making sure it's not any of our number ones.
Five
If you
Nights
get
at
started,
Freddy's.
just make sure.
Five Nights at Freddy's was really fun.
Yeah, I love Matthew Lillard in that film. That dude made me laugh so hard in the
Josh
film.
Hutcherson,
Yes,
like,
Josh Hutcherson
acted
got
his
it.
little heart out for not
Did you see
like,
the-
acting in 10 years.
Did you see the Nicolas Cage version of the same type of film that may
Oh
or
my
may not be better? Speculation is out.
I need to see that still.
You should. They're both fun.
What's it
watch
called?
movies.
What's it called?
Oh god, it slips my mind right off the top of my head.
I'll look it up.
Yeah,
What?
It's something like somebody's pizza or some shit. I can't remember.
Domino's?
No, that's just shit.
Billy's
Ooh, no
Wonderland.
branding, no mark.
Billy's
There
Wonderland.
it is. Yeah, I was like, it's somebody's. Yeah, a fun ride for sure.
I have two more. I have Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, 1933.
Ooh,
I do
all
enjoy
right.
it. I went old school. I
Get it.
almost put the werewolf on mine instead of that one. Like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, I've always liked that concept. I do not like the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen version.
That was going to be my question. I was going to ask you to see
Yeah,
what
I
your
don't-
thoughts were on that.
I like the different sizes of him. Like, because in the comic they do the same thing where he's human and then you have the monstrous size of him.
More like Hulk,
You
yeah.
don't have that. The 1933, it's just a normal human, and then you
Yeah.
have another version of him, but that's it. But I do like the little buffed up version, but not to the point where what the movie did. The movie was terrible. It is the movie that put Sean Connery in a retirement for a reason. It's a guilty pleasure. I do just
True that.
laugh. I'll just
Love that
laugh.
car.
Yeah. But my last one I'm going to bring up is an old one, and it can be considered a thriller. It is probably one of my weird Alan Arkin films I like, but it's also Audrey Hepburn. Wait Until Dark. So, Pat, what's your honorables?
So I have.
Patty B.
Patrick.
Patrick.
So I got a lot. I got 7. Okay.
Oh, crap.
Okay, wow, all right.
I'm gonna
Wait,
go
wait,
down-
wait. Hold up. You've got 7?
Yeah.
Honorable mentions.
We should do that after we do our last background so that you don't ruin it for somebody else, right?
There's some that I like way more than others, but The Ring,
Okay.
The Haunting,
Okay.
Dawn of the Dead from 2004,
Ooh.
American Psycho, the original Final Destination, and a very, very guilty pleasure of mine, Tusk.
Kevin Smith.
Hey.
And then this last one right here barely missed my list, dude. This was like that number 6. Rear Window from 1954.
Alfred Hitchcock, baby.
Yeah.
Rear Window.
It's a good one.
That's probably my favorite Hitchcock movie, personally. I love the suspense behind it. I know we've talked about it, Brandon, where I think horror had a different meaning back then than it does today. And
it does. What we think of then is now thriller to us. But
It was mental horror back then. They were really trying to get to the psychology. Cool. As long as that's not anybody else's top one. Day of the Dead was almost my 5 instead of Cabin of the Woods. If you haven't seen Day of the Dead, it is fantastic. It's in the same series, same lineup, same universe.
As Evil Dead?
No, Evil Dead's different. Dawn of the Dead, Day of the Dead. They're Return of the like. There's the whole series with George Romero are their own universe. Yeah, their own series. And so Day of the Dead is part of that, and I really love that one. The effects in it are key. I was just curious if anybody had any more of the Deads.
Oh no,
Night of the Living Dead sometimes makes people list. It was pretty revolutionary back in the day for its characters and who survived and who didn't. The black and white one.
So since we are talking about number 1, Rick, why don't you start us off?
Let's do it. I don't even need to look because I know it's in my heart. It's in my soul. The Thing is my number 1, hands down, of any horror movie. That just it says what I once said about a horror movie, and that real horror in most people's mind is you're gonna die. That's what's scary about any of these horror movies, is the threat of impending death of some sort. I think is most people's fear. The shape-shifting, the effects, the acting, the resolution at the end, The Thing just stands out in so many ways. Rob Bottin, Stan Winston, all the people that chipped in to make the effects happen on that film. If you have not seen The Thing from the late 70s, like, be sure that you go check out some special effects that stand up right now, face to face, peer to peer with anything on television or film right now.
And a great performance by Kurt Russell.
Yeah,
Kurt Russell. Oh my goodness. Yeah. You want a franchise that I would get behind immediately with his son taking over and doing a redo that way? If you're going to say a remake because of the way they've handled Monarch,
yeah,
I would love to see Wyatt Russell reprise that role in some sort of way if they were going to go remake, because of what happened with the prequel, I guess, or sequel. I'm not sure exactly timeline on that. With the one that they let the CG take over, which the fan base just rejected outright.
Yeah.
And you can see that the practical effects stand up today. So if you could do it back then, you should be able to do it now, right? Was the logic behind it.
Well, you bring up a good
and
point.
That you see the effects that they did, amalgamated effects. You know, they show the practical effects that they removed and replaced with CG stuff. So they did some great stuff.
Well, you bring up a good point too, because of the way they did things and stuff too. This was another movie from John Carpenter, and you see what he did with Halloween, but then you see him do something like The Thing and see the total difference in the way he directs it. How, you know, there was a bigger budget for The Thing compared to what the budget was for Halloween. And it's just fun to see it because it's like, okay, how did the man who created a man in a mask create something this terrifying that you don't know what he truly is or who he is at the time? It's fun to watch that. The Thing is it's a very underrated movie. Like, out in my
at the time, very panned. Like, it was like, oh my god, people were not feeling The Thing back then.
My number 1, you guys might guess it. It's The Haunting of Hill House. I have watched this show 6 times all the way through. It's horrifying on so many levels. Each of the kids represent a different piece of trauma in the trauma scale. Each one of them suffers from a different form of trauma. You really get, it was a great look at mental health care in America. It was a great look at how, you know, the supernatural mixes with the what's really happening in reality. Not believing kids when they say things to you. It was very good at the time, and it came out in 2018, where I think that was kind of the boom of like people taking mental health seriously for the first time and realizing like, oh, maybe people want to know more about this. And so I think the storytelling was awesome. As we said earlier, the monologues that Mike Flanagan does are absolutely fabulous. And then you have a similar cast, but with different pieces as the other Mike Flanagan products. I believe that his wife is in everything that he's done at this point. So I love this show. Anybody that has the opportunity to see it, again, it is a bingeable show. And I think that this is funny because we just talked about how crappy Metacritic and Rotten Tomatoes and everything is. This is one of the ones that is universally liked because it has an 8.5 on IMDb, a 93 on Rotten Tomatoes, and a 92 from just population liking it. So I think that this was one of the only ones that I've seen so far that universally everyone says is a good thing. And it has stemmed more and more work for Mike Flanagan and more work for these actors. And I will watch and eat up every bit of content from that population of actors.
Absolutely. So we'll keep on the trend of number one. This is the oldest film on my list. It goes by the tagline, "No one will be admitted to the theater after each start of this movie." On top of it, one of the famous quotes from this is, "A hobby should pass the time, not fill it." This is by far one of my favorite Alfred Hitchcock films of all time. I'm going with Psycho. This iconic shower scene, the iconic music behind it. And the reason, and I understand it, that's why I said you guys should watch the movie called Hitchcock, because it really explains why they would not allow people to be admitted after the movie started. It was very well done. Like, it shows you more behind the scenes, but with actors. And it's such a great way to do it. This movie set standards for horror movies from here on out. And Alfred Hitchcock did a fantastic job with what he had. And why I said there's a connection between Psycho and Halloween is because there is a mother-daughter relationship. You ready for this? You can see if you guys know. Janet Leigh, who plays Marion, is Jamie Lee Curtis's mom in real life. And if you guys pay attention to H2O, they're both in it. And there is a reference in H2O with Janet Leigh's role from Psycho, because the car that's behind her is the same car she drives in Psycho. I love that.
Love how they
Deep cut Easter egg. Yeah.
It shows.
Yeah, Hitchcock was a master of the art of filmmaking and theatrical performance. So he wanted people locked into what he was trying to focus their attention on.
It's a great film. It has, of course, one of the most iconic deaths, but to me, it also has one of the silliest deaths, I guess is a good way to put it. Because the shower scene is iconic. But the scene I say is the funniest is when you hear the detective go in and he's trying to do it and you see him fall down the stairs. It's just the way the shot. It's just funny to watch him. But the creme of the creme, Anthony Perkins in this film as Norman Bates, is phenomenal. This is by far like the role for him. They spawned 2 sequels after it, which at first why, but then it makes sense because develops the psychology of Norman Bates a little bit further. That's the only appreciation I have for 2 and 3. But and then they try to remake it and it was bad. Never remake that movie. It's iconic for a reason. Leave it as it is. But Anthony Perkins is great in this film. The twist at the end where you realize mom really has control over him no matter what is iconic. That creepy smile still lives in me to this very day. When he comes in with the knife dressed up like his mom is creepy as hell. And when you see the mom dead, the skull and everything, that still gave me jitters to this day. Something else I like too is that Alfred Hitchcock is in every movie of his. And this time, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, this is when she went to the car lot to switch cars, and he's a guy walking his dog. It's really I love Alfred Hitchcock. I grew up with him, and to watch him really do this movie is just fantastic to see. I still watch this. This is my overall, like, I watch this every year. Sometime, somewhere, I watch it when I'm just bored and I want to watch a good movie. Because there's always something new you can learn from this movie. It's not a movie you just go, oh, I know everything about it.
Nothing more chill and relaxing than watching Psycho, man. And I want to relax after a long day of hard work at my job. I want to watch Psycho.
Heck yeah. Shower scene all day. No,
yeah, another great musical cut to bring into a film as a cue. I think most people know that one.
Yeah.
And then the visual imagery of the house itself has its own aesthetic look that people know at a glance.
It's still at Universal Studios to this very day. It is.
Yeah.
It's still iconic. It's just that great. It spawned a show, Bates Motel. It spawned a lot of things, and it's just.
Is that show worth watching?
When it first started, yes, it was actually really entertaining. I think when you got to the later season, it just got to the point where it just gets to a point where it's like, okay, end this. Like
chocolate syrup.
Yeah, chocolate syrup always. I love that scene too, because in that Hitchcock movie, you actually see where they use the chocolate syrup and why. Because people are questioning, like, why are you using chocolate syrup? And this is, I'll be honest, this is also another movie I'm glad they never remade in color. I like the iconic black white.
That's very clever though to use chocolate syrup in a black and white. Like,
Well,
I thought of that. Like,
yeah, the filmmaker's looking for viscosity and endurance in the set. Like,
yeah, it's a great movie. Psycho's a great movie.
Man. Good choice. Good choice.
Pat, finish us out.
Patty B.
My number one is a one that kind of meshed in with my childhood a little bit because I grew up, my grandparents, as you know, B-Dog, I grew up in California, born and raised. My grandparents had a house near the Santa Cruz Mountains in Santa Cruz. So this movie always kind of, I don't know why it just attached to me because I've always visited, but I also going through my list and making this list, I felt like I was doing a disservice to the horror genre if I did not include a vampire movie. I'm going with The Lost Boys from 1987.
Yeah, there we go.
Somebody break out a saxophone. Let's go.
Pulling this bitch. I still believe. I love this movie, man. It's got an all-star cast. I loved Corey Feldman because I'm a big Goonies fan. Jason Patric. This is probably one of Jason Patric's better movies, other than Sleepers. I don't know, man. Just like I said, Kiefer Sutherland. I know when I was a kid and I watched this movie, I wanted to be Kiefer Sutherland because he's just a cool motherfucker.
You probably think,
it didn't get much cooler, and he set a look for that whole time period too, for sure. He was cool, like back then. That was the thing.
Corey Haim, Kiefer Sutherland, Jason Patric, Corey Feldman, Jamie Gertz, who is another big '80s actress, billionaire now too, owns half or partially owns the Atlanta Hawks. Alex Winter, who we know is from Bill and Ted's Most Excellent Adventure.
It's not a movie you would think of for him.
And then
wonderful film.
Yeah.
Diane Wiest, who I absolutely love. She's still making bangers. I don't know if you. Side note: have you guys seen I Care a Lot? It's a Netflix movie. Came out a few years ago. All right, I'm not gonna get into it, but you should definitely check that movie out. She's in it. Edward Herman too is another guy that was in it. He was in the Gilmore Girls, but he's the I should say the date or the love accomplice of the mom, and then Bernard Hughes, who is the grandfather. So, like I said, all-star cast. It's got some pretty cool shots in this movie too. I think it really encapsulates the feel of what Santa Cruz is. I don't know if you gentlemen have been, I know Brandon's probably been to Santa Cruz.
That's
But
weird. We share two places in common. My dad was a Marine, so he was stationed in Santa Cruz, and we moved from Santa Cruz to here in Tennessee.
Wow.
So yeah, as soon as you said that, I was like, what, really? Tennessee and Santa Cruz? That's crazy.
Yeah.
But yeah, the flight scene, just flying over,
Mhm.
get a good look at the area.
Love the bridge with all the fog, and he's like, "Just let go, Michael." He's like, "All right, I'm gonna let go." But this movie's got some awesome. It's got some, like I said, it's got some awesome shots. I really love the original music in it. The "Cry to your sister," dude. It's iconic, man. Like I said, I could watch this movie. You can put it on right now. I'd sit down and watch it. It's a quick watch too, and that's what I think makes the movie a little appealing for me. It's not a movie that's going to be over 2 hours long. It's quick to the point, but I also love the comedy aspect of the movie too. Right, kind of gives you like an upbeat feeling of it. But in reality, it is a horror movie and it is a vampire movie, and I think it kind of pays homage a little bit to those older vampire movies, right? But it kind of gives it a more modern look of it, I think too. So, no, the Lost.
Yeah, that modern look carried over the Kiefer Sutherland eyebrow. That became the
Yeah.
Buffy look.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that, it branded as the vampire. Like that's what vampires look like now.
But when they trip during the whole fighting scene at the end of the movie, where they trip the guy into the holy water and he just melts, I'm like, dude, that's just brutal.
Yeah, that's on one of my Fangoria covers. Like a gruesome looking makeup, man. It's
Yeah.
another fine choice. Lost Boys.
Awesome.
Funny is with the Lost Boys, I really didn't incorporate it into my list until a few days ago when we, planned on doing this, and I'm glad I did it because I'm glad no one even talked about it because
Well,
I mean,
I'm glad that all of us had different picks. So all of us had 20 movies that we represented on our list. But that leaves it up to you, fans. What are your top 5 films, horror films of all time? What do you think about our list? Let us know in those comments. Check us out on all platforms, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. If TikTok exists at this point in time, at Just for Flicks or J4F Podcast. Rick and Adam, thank you guys for both joining us. Rick, tell the fans where they can find you.
Well, thank you all for having me. I really appreciate that. You can check me out pretty much any social media. Rick Prince is my name, and that is at Rick Prince on most of those platforms.
Awesome.
IMDb as well. Check me out there. See what I'm up to next in the film world.
Absolutely. And Adam, where can fans find you?
Besides the Ghost Squad podcast, part of the Comic Talkers Network, you can also find me at the Rex Tano or Star Wars Comic Friend. I do comic book reviews, Lego builds, everything in between. So you can find me there.
Awesome. Check this podcast out, of course, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. And I'm going to turn it over to Patty B to take us.
Patty B!
Patrick.
Hey, thank you guys. Thank you, Rick. Thank you, Adam. And of course, thank you, B-Dog. This was fun. I'm glad we got to tackle this genre of films. And as always, we do it just for flicks. Good night, guys.